A couple of weeks ago, I picked up a new project, a 1990 BMW M5. Now, this M5 in particular had 17 previous owners, and it was abandoned in a field for many, many years. Now, during its time of being abandoned in a field, it's not really survived too well. And in the last video, we found out that this car was absolutely, completely rotten. And while I knew that it was going to need some repairs, I didn't think the repairs would go to this extent. I guess this is exactly what you get when you don't even look underneath the car before you buy it. So with the car being as rotten as it is, it has left me in two minds of what to do with the car. One side of me says restore it, it's an M5, and the other side says that is a complete breaker car. The only way to figure out what to do with this project is to dig into it a little bit further so I can make the final decision. So we have discovered that this car has had a very tough life. Now, the only thing we don't know is if there is a problem with the driveline. Now, hopefully it isn't the case. I've already heard it running, but only for a brief moment. Today we're going to get it running, see if there's any issues, and that might persuade what the future lies for the rest of this car. So the first point of action is to get myself in that boot and figure out a new fuel pump situation. I have already been in here and I've ripped the fuel pump out, and if we have a look inside, it's not really pretty and it is red. Not quite sure why it's red, probably something to do with the rusty insides, but as you can see there, it is not looking too happy. Now, my plan would be to change this out for a standard plastic E34 tank and then forget about the steel tank altogether. But for right now, there's no point in me putting a brand new fuel pump inside of that dirty old tank. If you're regular on the channel, you know that we got the other V34 started with a custom fuel tank, which is right here. It's not a genuine fuel tank, I know, don't shoot me in the comments, but what we can do is connect our new fuel pump to the original lines. That way we can bypass the dirty fuel and not drag any crap back into the engine. As well as that, we can bypass any immobilizer issues because we can put power directly to the fuel pump and we don't have to worry about anything stopping it from starting. What you will see here is the old fuel pump is right here, and you can probably tell it's really not happy, especially the wiring and fuel hoses going to it, which have literally turned into a smudgy mess. It's to be expected. Any BMW that sits for more than 3.5 minutes needs a fuel pump, and they always need the fuel lines and the hangers and all of that all at the same time. The joys. Get yourself an off-brand fuel tank and hopefully everything goes smoothly. Running a custom tank requires a custom loop. Now, that is literally just a bit of wire with some terminals on the end, but you need to then connect it up, and then you need to put it inside the custom fuel tank, and then you just need to top it up with a little bit of fuel. Not quite sure if it's MOT worthy, but you know, I think it's gonna do for right now. Arguably, it's probably not gonna seal as well as the original tank, but you know, it's not genuine. What do you expect? It's gonna work for now. Obviously, just gonna run these wires to a power supply, and then our fuel pump will just be putting fuel directly through the original lines. So now technically we can get it running, but I don't wanna just run it up on the old oil. I wanna drop the old oil, change the filter, change the plugs, give it a little bit of a birthday. It's all for a little bit of peace of mind. Obviously, I have heard it running, but only very briefly a long time ago. Once again, I'm reminded that I definitely need to get my ramp sorted at some point soon. I don't wanna be working on the floor. I have a ramp for a reason. But yeah, when you do work on the floor, this happens. Oh my god, I was about to die. Slight concern loading in 3, 2, 1. Well, there's certainly not a lot in there. Good job I'm changing this, really, isn't it? Oh wow. Well, I've actually lied to you. I don't actually have any plugs. I have ordered them, but I thought I'd already collected them. Apparently not yet, so the old ones are gonna have to do for now, but we'll take the filter out because obviously we do have that. Now, while I was working in this engine bay, it was very apparent that it was very tired and probably never been cleaned or treated in its entire life. Now, I've seen a lot of videos online of dry ice blasting. Now, while the bottom of this car would not be worth dry ice blasting, I think that the engine bay itself would really be a good candidate. We could get into all the nooks and crannies of the ITBs and the inlet manifold, and it wouldn't damage anything in the surrounding areas. The dry ice blasting, I'm not quite sure how much that cost. I've never looked into it. I've obviously never had it done. But I think even if I don't end up using this car, I think the dry ice blasting in the engine bay will be a good idea, because even if this engine doesn't live on in this car, it will live on in another car. And you also get a little less dirty when you're pulling it all apart, which fundamentally is what this car is going to need. Whether it goes back in the car, I'm not sure yet. But we still have to pull this engine out at some point. So for right now, I've just put some cheap oil in there just to get us by in future. Obviously, if the engine's worth it, I will be putting good oil in it. But for now, cheap stuff, get it running, and then I'll drain it out at a later date. Yep, we're ready to go. So I'm going to basically turn it over now without the fuel supply connected, and that's going to prime the engine with oil, make sure we haven't got any dry bearings or anything like that before we start it up. And then we'll connect the fuel pump, and hopefully we can get it to fire. And you can hear the fuel pump is working. And you can hear by the noise of it, it doesn't sound like it's pumping, so I may have the wires on backwards, because once that gets a bit of fuel in it, I think it will change the tone and it will be dragging the fuel that way. So if I simply switch the wires, see, that is changing noise, so now it's actually dragging fuel all the way to the front of the car. Good. And now for the moment of truth. Can we get this car running once again, and is the engine any good? No, not quite. Yeah, it hasn't started. What I think I may potentially have done is put the fuel on backwards, so our new external fuel pump is putting fuel up the return, therefore not getting any fuel to the fuel rail, therefore not starting. But there may be one other issue which hopefully isn't the case. This M5 is a victim of a 90s criminal act, the aftermarket alarm system, which is always a problem when cars are being sat. On this one in particular, it doesn't look like it's working at all, and hopefully by the state of the wiring underneath that dash, the fuel pump being backwards is exactly the issue. Oh! There is a lot of pressure in that pipe. I do believe I put that on the wrong side. Whoops. Let's try that again, and hopefully we have better luck this time. And it run, and almost as if it hadn't even been sat at all. The car idled, it sounded perfect, super happy. There was a slight little bit of an oil spillage on the exhaust, as you can see. There's quite a lot of smoke pouring off it, but that's nothing to be worried about. So let the car just idle, let it warm up a little bit, and hopefully it holds its temperature and everything goes smoothly. Does the rev counter work? That's the question. It does indeed. That oil is stinky. I did notice when I gave that a little bit of a rev that the ITB mechanism was a little sticky, and it did actually hold on a little bit more. So here I am trying to work it ever so slightly so it doesn't get stuck on when I do eventually drive it. Now that is a touch. That sounds very nice. You saw it, it literally sprung into life and idled like it was nothing. Just gonna let it build up to temperature now, and hopefully it doesn't overheat. I suspect this car probably has a stock thermostat, because all of these E34s that were abandoned all had stuck thermostats. So I'm not expecting this to be any better, but let's hold out and hope, and then I'll see if it drives around the yard. Stays there, that is great, but the reason I'm in here is I want to see if I can get a gear and if it will go into first, second, third, fourth and fifth. So clutch in first, Oh, it runs. That's a start, so that's good. I'm gonna basically let that idle a little bit more, and if it stays there, I'm gonna go drive this around the yard and click through the gears and see what it does. I know I haven't got any brakes. The front calipers are not there. The rear circuit isn't gonna work, but I'm sure I can manage to use the handbrake. Hopefully it doesn't get stuck on now, but yeah, hopefully that is the case. Looking very good. I have noticed that the M car has a oil temperature, and well, it doesn't actually do anything on this car. Not quite sure if it's meant to be at temperature right now, or I've got to wait a little bit longer, but we will see what happens. All I do know is that these clocks aren't cheap. I saw it set on eBay for 500 quid. Whether he's taking the piss or not, I don't know, but that is a lot of money and they already don't work. So it was time to try and pot it around the yard, and as soon as I put the camera on, it developed a misfire, so you'll be able to hear that. I tried to rev through it. Did it disappear? No. But I still insisted that I was going to be pottering it around the yard. Now, even if I'm doing 5 miles an hour and barely even pressing the accelerator, this was still quite a good feeling because, okay, another car that's been abandoned is now driving around the yard. But yeah, there's still problems and there's a lot of things still yet to do. And at this point, as I'm looking in the engine bay, I start to panic a little bit because that misfire has ended up sounding a lot worse. The engine is making some horrible noises and it doesn't seem to be clearing up, just getting a lot worse. But I think what was happening here is the engine was starving of fuel. Doesn't sound healthy. So, you just heard that sound rather rough, and it then died. Not quite sure why. So I looked in the back, and I believe it's out of fuel. That has not lasted at all. All it's done is idle, and it's done like 7 quid's worth of juice. Need a bigger aftermarket fuel tank, I think. Let's try this again. Sounds better. A little bit of a misfire. It's hesitating quite a bit. I don't know. Seems alright, just misfiring. Probably dragged some dirt or fuel through the original fuel filter, which I probably should have removed in hindsight. So yeah, it ran out of fuel, or it was misfiring when it was getting low on fuel, so it's getting starved of fuel. I drove it a little bit around the yard. I'm doing that right now. The power steering doesn't work, and obviously that is connected to the rear suspension, and as we've found out already, that is leaking. So I would be surprised if there was any fluid in the power steering reservoir whatsoever. I have not actually checked, but yeah, we've got a little bit of a misfire now. It was hesitating and struggling to run. It did sound a bit rough, but I mean, I have not done anything to it apart from change the oil. It was running sweet, and then after a little bit, it's I've stalled it. So we hit first, second, it's working. Bearing in mind, I've got no calipers on this thing. I've got a handbrake that just does something. And I mean just. The aim of this is to make sure the whole drivetrain is good, and third. Yeah, that seems good. We're doing 20 with no calipers. Pull that handbrake. Yeah. So, there is one good sign. It goes into gears and it works. What does fourth and fifth feel like? I don't know, but I'm going to hazard a guess and say it's probably going to be all right. I'm driving an M5. Click second. It's all good. Doesn't do a lot. Technically right now I have a running and driving M5. I mean, albeit it is misfiring a little bit, I will 100% put that down to probably something in the ignition system or an air leak. Obviously I haven't investigated it. It was running fine and then it started misfiring. So maybe something's warmed up, and after it being sat for so long, once it's warm, it's failed. I'm not quite sure. With the fuel lines being as rotten as they are, there is a possibility that might have dragged a bit of dirty rust through into the fuel system. Probably not a good idea to run it on those original lines, but what are you gonna do? It's probably something along those lines, but I'm not too worried. I've heard it run. And actually, this is the second day, and last night I did actually drive it around the yard. So I'll just chuck a little clip in there for you. And as you can see, it was working quite well. So yeah, what now? What now? Well, we've discovered that the engine, I'm gonna say, is good. Now, obviously the misfire is mildly alarming and it did make some horrible noises, but it was starving of fuel. A misfiring engine never sounds good. It's not meant to run like that, so it's not going to be so smooth. And as this engine is massive, it's probably got a lot of moving components that need to be moving smoothly and efficiently. Now with the misfire, I'm going to say it's probably a fuel delivery issue. We've put that fuel through the original lines, original fuel filter, and as we saw in a previous video, the fuel lines aren't very nice. So they could have potentially dragged through a little tiny particle of rust through the line up into the injector out and blocked one of the injectors, and that could be the main reason for the misfire. Now this only started misfiring when it got up to temperature, so there is a possibility that one of the ignition leads is broken down once it got to a certain temperature. It's kind of coincidental that it also ran out of fuel at the same time. Could be either one. Either way, we need to investigate a little bit further, but I can be pretty happy that it was healthy before it started misfiring. As you all heard, it runs super smoothly. What I didn't show you in the video is that inside the rocker cover underneath the oil cap, it literally looks about brand new. And when I drove it around in the car park, I had daylight to the clocks and I could just see the mileage, and it read 138,000 miles. So yeah, this is kind of a low mileage car. Now, I don't want it to make it seem like I'm literally stringing everyone along for a laugh. It is quite the commitment to get this back on the road, and I've seen all your comments. It's very 50-50. Half of you say throw it away and take the running gear out and put it in another car. The other half of you say, you know, rebuild this one because it'll be incredible for the channel, and at the end of it you own an E34 M5. And I'm on that side, I really am, but you know, it is massive amounts of commitment. The other half, let's say, take the engine and running gear, put it in a standard M5, which is a Touring or a normal BMW. If I'm gonna be real with you, you have to rebuild it as an M5. There's no point rebuilding an M5 rep when you have the real thing here. And because I've shown everyone on the internet, I can't exactly go and ring this thing, can I? Because you'd all find out very quickly. There's a few things I still want to go over, mainly interior, because that is such a big chunk of the investment of rebuilding this car back to its former glory. So I think in the next video I'll do that. But luckily the engine is good. I'm gonna say it's good. Obviously, I heard it running when it was cold and it first started up, it was sweet. I think something's just failed in the ignition system, which is probably to be expected when you don't change any of it and it's sat for many, many years. The likelihood is it's probably gonna get rebuilt because I do want an M5 at the end of this. I don't want a M5 Rep, I want an M5 at the end of it. It's a lot of work, yes. It's massive commitment, yes. We do need to dig into a few other things before I make my final decision. Because if I don't go all in, it's not gonna be worth it and it's not gonna be good to watch. What does worry me is trying to program in months of rust repair and make the videos entertaining. So that is a big issue because no one wants to watch rust repair for a year because it seems like a lot of work. But I don't know, if I stick my head to it, I think it'll be done in reasonable amount of time because I am quite motivated when it comes to getting stuff done. Once I'm in the mindset of getting it done, things do get done. When I put things on the back burner, things don't get done. So if it's gonna get done, it has to get done there and then. So yeah, I'll let you decide again in the comments, like you did in the last video. You told me absolutely everything in the comments. Let me know what you think now. Do you wanna see a year's worth of rust repair? Do you wanna see me just strip this and put it in a Touring? That's another thing. A Touring, not really into it. Not really into making an M5 Touring. Just not really into that. I'm more of a saloon man when it comes to the E34, but that's just me and that's my opinion. But yeah, that's all from me. I'm gonna leave this here, dig into a little bit more this week, and hopefully I'll see you Friday with another update on this or the E34 Touring that is in the yard because we still have a lot of footage left from that and we might be getting it on its 4 wheels with the coilovers on and its first drive on the road. So stay tuned for that. I'll see you Friday regardless. Have a good week. See you later. Goodbye.